we can get going and see where we end up on the various subjects for us today. Welcome everybody to the weekly webinar. Malcolm's not with us today. He's actually on holiday because he was travelling back all the way from Chicago over the weekend. He's been a bit of a workaholic. I've already had a message from him this morning, but I think it's fair to say he's probably suffering from jet lag. But we do have a few people with us today on the panel. We've got Liz. Liz, welcome to you this morning. I know you're having a few issues with your computer, but hopefully you're able to take part. Possibly. We've also got Gareth with us. Is Naomi on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Naomi. Kevin, we're hoping for Kevin. Kevin, I can see.
I'm here too.
Well, there. And obviously Nick's with us as well, marshalling the troops and making sure that if there are any questions raised, comments made, we can discuss those. So without further ado, I will get on with the webinar. Today, unfortunately, we've had an issue with our stats. Stephen, our support manager, had to take his little one to go and get a COVID test this morning, bless him. But hopefully we'll have an update on stats because it's been a few weeks. It'd be interesting to see. I think in a way it'd be interesting to see, it's been about a month, how the stats have changed over a period of a month instead of going through the weekly stats. So I'll see if I can get Malcolm on the case for that one for next week. Sorry about that, lost my cursor again. So having mute technical difficulties. Every time Malcolm makes his, I'll give my excuses, his presentation is done on the Windows version of PowerPoint and my Mac doesn't seem to like that. But I've got my pointer back again now so I can click on the fancy icons. We'll start as usual with the council tax and business rates update from Kevin Stewart on the top of the billboard. Kevin, is there anything for you to let us know about this week?
Nothing really changed from last week. Obviously, there's the constituency data to get in. That's a closing date of this week. Reconciliations are ongoing on grants. On business rates, we're waiting for the fundamental review of business rates, expected on the 26th of October, and seeing what other things are there. Quiet on council tax. Business rates, the expanded retail discount is a lot of businesses aren't applying for it for one reason or another, and they've removed a lot of this from business rates accounts, which means there's an awful lot of extra business rates to collect.
Yeah. I was something on the council tax side. I was reading this morning. I don't know if it's going to be a bit of a news push over the next few days, but I was reminded rather that the spending review, sort of end of October. I think the LGA is making a bit of noise asking the government to make sure that where council tax support is concerned, for instance, that the funding that's previously been there. I guess it's going to be a quiet time at the moment because all the mandarins are busy contacting each department, telling them how much money they've got to cut over the next year and listening to their plaintive cries.
That's true enough.
And it should be quite interesting. I mean, obviously it's a couple of weeks away, but I imagine we'll have a lively discussion once the spending review details start coming out as well.
And it'd be interesting to see what they limit council tax to this next year as well.
Yeah, because again, some stuff that Malcolm was saying. I mean, there is a sort of, we've been talking recently a lot about inflation, and a lot more people, obviously over the pandemic, are going on working age benefits and pension age benefits. There's some worrying noises out there about councils saying that they might not actually be able to afford to give as much support to working age families as they have been in the past.
Yeah.
Quite a concern. Well, it'd be interesting, as I say, to see what goes on in the next few weeks. So if I move on, we've recently just come. Well, I've not, but Nick has. In fact, for me, it's the first time I've not been to an IRRV for quite some time. But Nick, if you don't mind, would you be able to give us a bit of a conference update? I know you were busy manning the stalls during the week last week down in sunny Telford, face to face with real humans.
Yeah. So I felt it was a good couple of days.
I don't know. I spoke to a few people. I know Naomi spoke to you. What's that photo of me on there? So yeah, we were there. It was pretty busy. Everyone liked the chocolate. I've had a message through from someone saying they would like more Team Netzel chocolate, regardless of the golden ticket. It seems it actually did taste nice. I think we might have had one golden ticket not make an appearance. I think we drove 4 or 5 tickets in the end. So I think someone took the chocolate as probably kicking themselves at home. But yeah, I felt it was a good few days. Most people I spoke to seemed to be happy to get on about. Obviously, we didn't go to dinner. So I know there's a few people on here that their authorities did very well in the awards. So congrats. So yeah, we didn't get along this time. But yeah, I think it was a good few days.
Was there many people there? I mean, one of the things I was concerned about, as all the conferences, it's interesting to me to see if people are really desperate to go out and see people face to face, or whether there's a large cohort that's still a bit nervous about going out into sort of enclosed spaces.
Yeah, I felt it was quite busy. I mean, unfortunately, one of the speakers on day one didn't turn up. Quite ironically, it was a doctor who was there to talk about the long-term effects of COVID, who actually caught COVID the day before, so wasn't able to come along. So that was a bit of a sad irony. Trust he's okay. I don't think we had any more of an update other than he wasn't well. But I think generally people turned out. Oh, Nikki's suggesting the gala dinner was too busy. That's probably one of the reasons why I didn't want to go. I did wonder how they were going to man the 10-person tables in that busy room, but I'm guessing they just went for it as normal.
And what about the disco at the end of the night? Was everybody maintaining social distance while they were jiving away to the 80s classics?
I don't know. Maybe Nikki can fill us in on that. She's saying it was
I would say there was no social distancing in the disco at all.
Well, we'll have to track maybe in a couple of weeks instead of the spending review. We'll do a piece on super spreader events and how the IRRV might have helped. I noticed there's a picture of Damien up there. Did anybody get to see Damien's future talk? I heard that was quite. I've only read the notes. I've not actually even seen the presentation myself. But he seemed to delve into the history of all the way back to telephones and cable communications and the future of virtual delivery service. Not sure whether it was well received.
He had quite a busy room. I think he had quite a full room. So yeah, I don't know. It was quite a heavy subject, but I think people might have come away thinking about it. Who knows? You know, it worried me when I saw a building being made out of Lego, basically, and that being a thing. So yeah, I don't know.
I mean, there was a heavy focus on robotics and how the rise of the machine will be putting us all out of work, which will obviously have massive knock-on consequences for the way that local services are delivered and how much money you actually get in.
Yeah, I think it was basically like Damien's mind dumped onto some slides, wasn't it? So we'll see if that's like the future or whether that's what Damien's predicting. We'll call himself Nostradamus, wondering if it all comes true.
So we'll either do a refresher in 5 years' time, or we'll quietly brush it under the carpet and pretend it didn't happen. Interesting. Hopefully there'll be a few more live conferences now, but the subject that we've got today is a subject of subsidy, not from the technical point of view, but just the shape of subsidy in the future. The question Malcolm's posing is, what do we think is going to be the future of subsidy? This interesting table on screen at the moment shows from March 2021 welfare spending forecast. So there might be more accurate figures out there now for 2020 to 2021. But we're looking at, obviously, as people might realise, if the second set of figures on the chart about UC and its legacy benefit predecessors, we can see obviously the DWP have predicted that the spending on universal credit is going to be ramped up massively in the near future. It's already been ramped up quite a lot but from 2019 to 2020, but that's obviously what we'd expect. While pensioner benefits will be going through through the roof as well. Not at quite a fast rate, but going through the roof as well. But again, this is all to be expected as we have an ageing population. Be interesting to see how this affects people's subsidies. Spending on universal credit and its predecessors is at over 15 billion in the last year. Obviously, the large rise is more than explained by the 19.5 billion rise in spending on UC, while other benefits, the spending on those has dropped. Pensioner benefit spending is also up nearly 2.5 billion over the last year, partially because of there was quite a large uprate towards the end of last year with the triple lock. There's a rather sad sentence at the end in brackets showing us that this forecast from March assumes there'll be 100,000 excess pensioner deaths, which actually reduces the spending by 0.6 billion in that year. I mean, how is this spending going to be affecting local authorities? I mean, one of the things that struck me when Malcolm was discussing this with me last week is, as we see housing benefit subsidy for administration go down, for instance, you actually end up in a situation with local authorities where the case number in housing benefit is going down, but the complexity of these cases is actually going up. You know, already at the moment you've got pensioner housing benefit, but there's also specified supported accommodation, which is paying out housing benefit. It's very rare that a person sort of going on to benefits for the first time would get access to housing benefit, but it's still there. How is this going to affect the future delivery? I think it's fair to say, I mean, I don't know if any of our panelists know this, but there's quite a lot of anecdotal evidence out there that definitely states that at the moment, even at the moment, housing benefit administration is actually probably costs more than you get in housing benefit administration subsidies.
Absolutely, yeah. Each authority is funding the shortfall. And as you know, the pool of housing benefit cases gets less, the complexity, I do think, will still be there, if not greater, definitely with supported and exempt accommodation, but also the pensioners. The pensioners are not the easy, low risk, low change that I think some people imagine. We have quite complex issues with some non-dependents. The regulations do ease things, but there are some real complexities in there. And of course, capital. Large capital overpayments are the bane of many local authority when dealing with pensioner claims.
I mean, from this diagram, obviously the DWP has always been a bit optimistic on the universal credit figures, but the ramp up of universal credit is massive on that sort of from 18 billion now, and they suspect that 2025 to 26 is going to be up to 61 billion. And at the same time, we see housing benefit going from 12 billion now to less than 5 billion. And yeah, it's like you said, these cases that are having to be assessed are the complex ones.
I'm not sure how DWP think that they can get down to 4.7 billion working age housing benefit with absolutely no managed migration now. Yeah,
I'm mindful of the fact that the figures for sort of migrating people ever since it was first invented in 2013 have perhaps not quite gone as planned by the DWP.
Do you think?
You can remove the as planned bit, it just has not gone.
We have seen a massive uptake of universal credit over the last year, and also, I mean, even from research I've done on what the DWP digital department are doing at the moment, there were some bids they were putting out for contractors, where the main thrust of this was to work on the data that they already hold on, that they get through LAs and other sources on people who are on legacy benefits, in order to do some kind of automatic managed migration, where they're literally hiring as many programmers and data analysts as they possibly can to try and figure out who's on what benefit and how can they push people onto to universal credit. I can see Liz, you've got your hand up. Feel free to jump in.
Well, I only wanted to jump in to say that there is just another factor in relation to pensioners, which is the fact that very many more of them are working these days. You know, it's not just people on with capital, it's people with income as well. And also, I'm leaving now because I'm in the middle of a chat with somebody to try and solve my catastrophic outlook problems. So I'm sorry to let you down, but I'm going to log off. But I agree completely with it. I mean, it's always been the fact that they have had, DWP have had an exaggerated view of how universal credit is going to tip the balance. And also, yes, without managed migration, how is that going to happen? Anyway, that's my bit, and I'm sorry to love you and leave you, but I must do so.
And I'll add mixed age couples into the pensioners mix as well as being another great fun area.
Yeah, I remember wrestling with that when we were trying to sort the rules out in the benefits calculations ourselves. The the idea that you switch the priority from who's oldest to who's from who's youngest to who's oldest at a certain age does cause quite a few administrative issues.
And the irritating part about that is that quite often they are extraordinarily short lengths of time.
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, we can.
You don't get many 66-year-old married to somebody who's 35. I mean, you know, their spouse is likely to be perhaps even months behind them.
You don't get Rupert Murdoch claiming very often, then.
No, sadly, no. I don't think I've come across him yet. Is that the age gap then?
Well, his previous wife was 38 years younger, I think. So I always felt very sorry for him having to exist on working age level benefits.
Yes, and I can't remember who he's married to. He's married to, who is he married to now? Oh God,
Jerry Hall.
That's right. Who probably is cracking on a bit now.
Yes, but still significantly younger than him. I think she's probably in the pension age bracket by now as well, so it wouldn't be quite so much of an administrative nightmare.
I think the average difference is meant to be about 3 years, but within members of a couple. So
yeah,
I shall have to look up her age now. When I can get into anything other than this. Right. Okay then.
Good luck with your outlook.
Sorry to miss it. Well, I'm not having any luck at all. I don't know where to take things. If I can't fix it myself, I don't know who can. No, I don't mean it that way. I don't know who can. I literally haven't found anybody who is going to give me any other answers than the one I've already got. Anyway, it's driving me nuts, but I won't go on about it because I'm eating into valuable Connect time. So bye-bye.
I mean, the next slide that Malcolm's given us here just sort of shows the changing spending based on these predictions for 2025, 2026 relative to today's figures. Obviously, we can see higher cost of pensioner benefits. We all know that people are getting older and living longer. Higher cost of disability benefits. Higher cost of other welfare. I really like the little bar that says the lower cost of UC and its predecessors. That's one of the tiniest reductions in spending, especially considering UC was supposed to be a simplified system of rolling all the benefits into one. But then, surprisingly, there's going to be a lower cost of child benefit. I mean, there's a big change in spending, but again, I'm mindful of the fact that now UC has been introduced. In many cases, it's causing quite a lot of administration. Specifically, I'm thinking about council tax reduction and support. That sometimes people are on UC, their wages are changing so quickly. You're actually getting large numbers of change of circs that have to be dealt with on these systems, which obviously is going to eat into some administration budget somewhere.
I think the problem there is local authorities having seen UC almost as an income stream rather than going back to the old kind of passported full entitlement.
Yeah, I mean, right from the early days, I remember via the software suppliers meetings, when talking to the DWP sort of 5-6 years ago, a question came up about how do you give somebody free school meals if their family are on universal credit. And the DWP, at this stage, after it had been rolled out, hadn't really thought about how you passport people onto benefit when they're, as we move to more, as we have moved rather to an economy where there's more weekly wages or 0-hour contracts. When you've got families, perhaps the start of the school year in September, definitely on free school meals, then the parents get a few extra hours on their jobs, which are then reported in October. Is that not good enough? But passporting has always been an issue, and it obviously would be a lot more simple if people could be passported. But how do we fix that issue? It is a concern.
I think passporting overall is a concern, because the old kind of idea behind passporting was, if you'd found somebody who was poor enough to need means-tested benefit, they were poor enough to need all the other support as well. And that carried through to everything from all the NHS low-income stuff, through disabled facilities grants, through blue badges and free travel and all sorts of things. Now we have a government that's very clear that people who are on benefits are not poor, despite what the stats might say, or at least not inevitably poor, and therefore they should be expected to pay for more things. So you give them less money and tell them to pay for more. It's a logic.
It's a bit like the way I guess you deal with local authorities. Tell them to do more and give them less money to do it.
Yeah. And that's the issue around subsidy, isn't it? To come back to that kind of point there. I mean, subsidy isn't necessarily anything to do with subsidy. Subsidy is part of the method by which the government has decided to deliver support to people and to pay for the costs of delivering that support. And it does, as you say, seem to be wanting to move the costs as well as the effort away from central government budgets.
It's a concern. I mean, we've seen, obviously I'm IT focused, but there's a move towards automation and integration. A lot of services these days, the DWP are sending out a lot more monthly notices, weekly updates, all sorts of data is being shared. I'm just wondering, is that the only way to address sort of subsidy administration anyway, as time goes by?
I don't know how it works in practice. What's the experience of local authorities about that change?
Yeah, has anybody on here had any experience? I mean, like I said just a moment ago, we do know there's a lot of change of circs being generated by universal credit claimants. Is that data coming through clean enough for the benefit system to actually use it? We're not sure at the moment. We'll have to do some research on that. Another question Malcolm's posing is...
Kim's just put a hand up on that one, I think, Jake.
Kim, if you'd like to join.
Hi, yes, just a word on the VEPS alerts or real-time information, as it makes a lot more sense to call it that. The issue that you have with earnings is the regulations between how you treat earnings in universal credit housing benefit is quite different. And these monthly alerts are designed really for universal credit. For housing benefit, we take past income and use that to go forward, and we don't have to keep asking them to send in pay slips every month. In fact, it's absolutely not necessary at all, because in case law and in law, we're looking at future likely income for housing benefit calculations. But we have these monthly files that come across, and because housing benefit is worked on an average, and the way averages work, you're going to have a different figure every month that comes through on these files to that average you've calculated. And so some local authorities are actually going into this unnecessary effort of recalculating every month. So that's put an extra burden on them. It's not also a legal method of calculating their earnings, and the DWP take the attitude is just wait and don't write off and check everything, just wait and see if they appeal. And that's just not correct. It's just not right. So you'll find that local authorities are doing a variety of different things when it comes to calculating earnings. I've done training in local authorities where I've seen them ask weekly payers to bring in a pay slip every week.
Yeah,
I think you still have the historic problem that people still think that the council tax reduction and HB really are the same kind of sums, which of course for a long time now they have not been. But and I think there are some IT companies that haven't yet really got that message fully either.
But it's down to the trigger is material change, and if there is no material change, well, just keep it as is. Yes,
absolutely. It is about a material change, and there is case law that supports that. But there were some very old-fashioned ways of dealing with earnings in housing benefit departments, which there was case law that came along, I think, in 2015, if memory serves me right. There was also a change in the legislation to support that. But some of those old-fashioned ways of doing it are still, still coming through.
Which, Kim, is madness on two fronts. One, the administrative burden for the local authority, and therefore for council taxpayers having to fund that. And two, for the customer. Good grief. I mean, that's just madness.
It is absolutely madness. And 0-hour contracts and that type of paying method seems, because it varies so much, seems to cause benefit departments the biggest angst when it comes to calculating earnings. But honestly, it needn't be. It can be quite straightforward. It's just understanding the decision-making principles. And that would reduce the burden on the local authority and the stress on the customer quite significantly.
I mean, just, the thought of somebody presenting a piece of evidence that needs to be scanned or at the very least logged every single week, pushed into your document management system. I mean, how many bits of evidence are you going to end up filling up your document management system? IT departments demanding bigger servers.
Yeah. I mean, even doing it every month is just it is bad enough, but to have to do it every week, it's just not necessary. The thing is that the housing benefit regulations and the case law is there to be followed, and that what takes precedence, not DWP guidance. And I'm going to use the word loosely.
What's your experience, though, of people notifying you of changes of circumstance and understanding what's material and what isn't?
That is a problem, and I don't work in local government itself. I just do the training courses. But case law goes into what needs to be said in decision notices as well, and these sorts of things save a lot of problems if decision notices or requests for information make it quite clear that when there's a change of circumstances, what that change of circumstances is, and when they have to do. When people are on 0-hour contracts, then it is necessary to review their income and work out that average more often. You're allowed to go up to 52 weeks or annually. But if somebody's income changes an awful lot, you might want to do it every 3 months or every 6 months. But you look at a cycle and you choose from that individual cycle, and then you ask them, every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever cycle you choose, to provide their most recent evidence of income. But what I often see is unnecessary overpayments created, is that when you're using income from a past period to assess benefit going forward. But what I often see happen is that if somebody comes in and produces actual income for the past 3 months, instead of it being used going forward, it's then done as a change of circumstances when they haven't actually had a material change. It's just that the average has changed, so it has to be going forward. You know, so but it is quite easy to do. It takes understanding of the decision-making principles right across the board, and that's what's lacking.
Nick, have we got any hands raised or comments from?
There's no hands raised. There's a bit of chat going on in the chat, but I'm not going to try and read it all out because it's picking up a little bit. So I guess if people want to have a little look, Robert's brought up some things. So's Grace and so's Naomi. I mean, obviously anyone wants to come on and talk a little bit more about it, feel free. But yeah, there's just been a little bit of chat on there.
Feel free, Robert, if you want to join in.
I don't mind. Again, I was just saying that you know, one of the difficulties we have is whilst we do have a very clear defined process in place that all our officers follow, and it is very much around the material change, and we do not process every payslip that's provided or every VEP record that is provided, because that is not the legislative process. That's not the case law process, and we are very clear with our officers, we're not going to process for the sake of processing. You know, it is done on averages. Those averages are applicable for a period of time. We have a review process internally in place where we will pick that up every so often. You know, we use all our systems to ensure we're doing those regular reviews, and we don't just process for the sake of processing, because the volume of work is just so much higher in terms of what is being generated through the change in search process and all the different data pathways we now have. But one of the issues is DWP do have a performance expectation around the data that they're providing us and the additional funding, new burdens funding that they're providing us to do that work, and they want to see the results from that. And you know, that can be a difficult case to argue on occasion, you know, when you're not creating the amount of overpayments that they're benchmarking you with, etc., etc. But you see, we don't approach it from an you know, it's not just about reducing benefit entitlement, creating overpayments, creating debts. You know, it has to be about, you know, how the customer is managing and what are their real life circumstances. And it isn't just about cutting benefit for the sake of cutting benefit, you know, because of, you know, £5 here, £5 there. That benefits nobody.
No, you're quite right, Robert. It doesn't benefit anybody, and this issue of the pressure that you're getting from the DWP to act in a certain way is very unreasonable. It doesn't match with what you're required to do in legislation, and I suppose it you know, it may be easy for me as an outsider to sit here and say all this, but you know, I do know of some local authorities that have queried and questioned the DWP on this and have won their case. And maybe it takes for, I don't know, the local government associations, etc., to bring these points forward, that there is this mismatch between what the DWP are requiring you to do and what the law requires you to do.
Indeed.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it is the customer that suffers, and at the moment, particularly, they do not need any more suffering.
No. And to be honest, the pressure the DWP put on doesn't worry me. I deal with that if and when it comes, because we will not change our processes to fit something they want when it isn't correct. Yeah. You know, so the DWP pressure, whilst annoying, it doesn't change the way that we do things, and we will stick to our processes and our guidance. and we continue to process that way. All it means is when they pull our VEP data off is, you know, we're processing or looking or putting results in for 100% or 98 point whatever percent of them. But our overpayment or debt creation, which is the other benchmark that they look at, is probably about 35% below what they anticipate us to be creating. That doesn't worry me.
No, and that's good to hear, Robert. Very good to hear.
Wondering, one thing I'm wondering is, are we still going to be in the situation where there's loads of work to be done to reconcile at the end of a year? Because as you know, back to the subsidy side of things, if I think that obviously the DWP and HMRC want us to move to a more automated, real-time information, even though local authorities don't necessarily get it in real time, especially earnings, and it's not necessarily, I mean, the changes aren't going in as smoothly as they could do. But we always used to get to a point at the end of the year where, you know, LAs have to hire loads of contractors in order to clear out various HB or get ready for the new council tax benefit year. But with this sort of spread out, constantly chasing you every month to make sure that your VEP updates are sorted, is that going to actually help in any way? Or is it still going to be a case of tidying up at the end of the year and having more work to do during the year?
To be fair, you will always have what we call our housekeeping reports at the end of every year, but depending on what processes you have in place during the year, so that you're not just dealing with it as one big piece of work, we do monthly reviews, so we never let it build up to the end of year. So within our business as usual, we do housekeeping every month. So our end of year reports are never that big now, where we have to get extra staff in, because we manage it continually through the year, so nothing should ever be a shock. And we've done that over the last 4, 5, 6 years now. We've just got into that process of working where our end of year, whilst you know there is more work to do, it isn't significant enough that it impacts our business as usual, because we've got it all within our yearly processes, month on month on month, week on week on week, so that we just manage it, because we know it's never going to change.
A silver lining perhaps to this cloud. And then there's also, I mean, we're getting close to the end now. I guess we're going to have to bring this discussion to an end, but I'm mindful of the fact that HBA has just been created by the DWP with a bit of a sort of delayed rollout. People, you know, the DWP know that there are loads of unreported changes, and there's various ways of trying to get people the right benefit. So we're all in a bit of flux at the moment. As I said, it's getting on for 12. Yeah, it's nearly 12:40 now. We've got. I shall be bringing this discussion to an end. It's been a very lively debate on subsidy. I think we are going to see some changes, and there's going to be obviously going to be pressures. And we've not even touched on the fact that there seems to be a lot more discretionary money possibly being made available, and perhaps that's a sticking plaster that the government might start relying on more in the future. I think next week we'll be talking about council tax. I will let you all go now. I'd like to thank all the panellists for their lively discussion and everybody who joined in. Nick, if you could make sure that the recording will be available, we can send it to Liz via email, so if you can open it and have a catch up on what she missed. But on that note, I think we'll be saying goodbye till next week, where hopefully Malcolm, if he's recovered from his enormous jet lag, will be online for us at a reasonable hour of the day, instead of it being sort of 4:30 in the morning in Chicago time.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.